What does he want on there?
This is a session with Langsuan Panyuthaphum, who is one of the greatest knee fighters of the Golden Age. This is up in Payao at a gym that it's incredible. When you look beyond the ring, just over to the side, it's just this endless field with these gorgeous mountain ranges right behind it. So it was cool. We drove over the mountain to get into Payao, which is maybe 3 hours outside of Chiang Mai. And Langsuan met us at a gas station so that he could guide us to this gym, because there's no pin, there's no way to find it. And I was really nervous to meet Langsuan. I'm a huge fan of his. And so when we pulled into this parking lot and I called him and I'm like, we're here, I had no idea what to expect, because these legends often look very much like they did when they were young, but also very different from when they were young. So I kind of didn't know whether I would recognize him. He was so much bigger than I thought he would be, because he fought Karahat and Gansak, who are not huge men. Karahat especially is quite small. But when I saw him in the parking lot, I totally my heart raced a little bit when I saw him at a distance, and he waved to me. And then when he pulled up in front of us so that we could follow him, his name is in Thai on the back of his car. So we were following Langsuan with his Langsuan car into this gym, which was really cool. Langsuan is telling me here to do 400 or 500 knees on the bag. He's talking about kind of the workout of knee fighters, which is basically just this endurance grind. He had me bouncing on the tire for 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes before the start of our session. And I'm asking him how come knee fighters nowadays aren't the same as knee fighters from his day. And see how he's on his toes? He's saying that everyone is really flat-footed now, whereas back in the day, as a knee fighter, you were on your toes and you could move a lot. So there was a lot of turning before the knee. See how he turns with his hips already back? I have so many trainers yell at me for not bringing my legs far back enough before throwing the knee, because it's not as powerful, but it also doesn't look as amazing. He has his hips in this cocked and ready position all the time for his knees. See how when he grabs in shadow, he's already got his hip back so that he can drive that knee in immediately. Both Karahat and Gansak said that he was a nightmare to fight because he's so exhausting. That's the thing about knee fighters, is they just keep coming.
They're flat. Yeah.
And this whole session is him teaching me how to be a golden age knee fighter. Just this endless endurance, endless knees, this stickiness, you just stay on your opponent. He's watching the clock over the ring, telling me how many more minutes I have to jump on the tire. The thing about jumping on the tire, this is very standard for gyms in Thailand, is it builds up your leg strength. Leg strength is a really big deal. We had just watched a fight online that was actually just a section that was Langsuan versus this Hapalang fighter. Hapalang gym had a lot of knee fighters. They had Diesel training with them a lot of times, and he was in their corner. It's this incredible fight. It's this endless clinch exchange. And Langsuan said that his body was a little bit bigger than his opponent, but they weighed in the same. So he's talking, he's reenacting this fight that was so incredible and exciting. That's the thing about Golden Age referees, is that they let the clinch keep going, so it kind of developed. He was saying that from an elbow, his eye got really swollen, and so he became a little bit Muay because he couldn't see, so he was a little bit sloppy because he couldn't see. So he's saying it's alright for me to come off of the tire. This is just a gym kind of under the deck of this dude, Pan. This is his gym, and they have had many different fighters come train with them. Saifa, who is one of the top female fighters of the north, has come and trained with them at this gym, probably with Langsuan. And it's just not a big deal that they train with these legends. To me, it's a huge deal. I idolize these guys so much. They were telling me that Karahat used to sleep up in this area that's like above the ring, probably like 7, 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. So he's having me just shadow box so he can figure out what I'm doing. And he's like, southpaw, okay. So he's just watching me, like, trying to see what my tendencies are and what he can correct. When he shows me the way to shadow box, he's incredibly linear. Like, he marches back and forth the way fighters back in the day learned when they were very little, is just marching back and forth. But look at how he tucks his foot up by his hip to get this super bend in his leg. It drives me crazy. If you look at his like hip and his knee, the way he folds and then drives the entire piece, you can see how much power is in it. You can see how it's all being driven by his hip all in one piece, and it kind of like arcs up. And he's stressing to me here that as a knee fighter, you're blocking a lot. So as you're closing distance, you're blocking on your way in, and after the block is when you throw your strike. It's like a counter. So he's saying the jab is really effective on your way in. So jab and teep. 1, 2, throw that straight knee, teeps to get them, because you're picturing the different distances that your opponent is at as you're trying to cut off that distance. See how he grabs off of the teep? Your opponent is either going to be stopped in their tracks from the teep because they're advancing, or they're going to be stumbling back because you just knocked them off balance a little bit. So you're grabbing them while they're either posted or off balance. He said he had just come from Chiang Mai the day before, where he was teaching at one of the gyms a group of people from Switzerland. He has a connection to Switzerland and has gone there for like 6 months at a time before. But it's interesting because it means that he's teaching Europeans who are not knee fighters Muay Thai, and I'm curious whether he really emphasizes knees or not. But look at his whole body position as he's throwing these punches, which are used to close the distance to get into knee range. He tells me over and over again to tuck that heel much closer up to my hip. He's not the only person to emphasize this style. This is a kind of knee that people will really focus on because it kind of wings out and then comes to the center, but his kind of arcs up like a bent blade or something. It's just a style, and you can see why people do the knees that they do based on the rest of their style around it. So Karahat's long knees, you can understand. Diesel Noy's kind of like piston knees, you can understand because of what the rest of their styles look like. Here he's talking about how close he wants the heel tucked up under the leg. Look how it arcs up. Oh, oh. Karahat does not like my knees to come high because then they're not as long. But because of the distance Langsuan gets into before he throws that knee, and he can throw like 50 of them, that's why they're shaped like that, and that's why they arc up like that, is they're coming up into like your solar plexus and into your ribs and stuff, but from the center. He just ground people down with his knees. He didn't only use knees, he uses punches and teeps and kicks from a distance as well. He's a very well-rounded fighter, but when he gets in there and his knees start going, it's just scary. So this is a drill at the end of rounds. This is like kind of a burnout kind of thing. They call it burn in Thai at the end of rounds when you just repeat something. But look at how he's pulling with his arms and then like pivoting at the end. So the way that he thinks about endless knees is that there are turns and pivots involved in repetitive knees. I'm a knee fighter and those are hard.
That's crazy.
It's hard. It requires incredible stamina and endurance to fight close like this. there's just like some chickens wandering around in the background.
That whole like, he actually brings everything back.
I was really struck by how he brings everything back. His hip comes back as he's grabbing. I have this problem where I put my ass back, which is different from what he's doing. If you kind of bend at the waist and pop your butt back, it distorts your frame, and so you actually take longer to strike, and you take your power away. But the way that he does it, he like hinges in this weird way.
It's like creating space.
Because he grabs with his hips in position, like it's already loaded to throw his knees. They're powerful and fast. Even though the difference between putting your ass back and like having your hips back in preparation seems really small, it makes huge differences, and it's just small angles and probably mentality about knowing I bring my ass back because I'm actually trying to create space defensively. He brings it back because he's creating space offensively so that he can fire into that empty space. You can't knee from super close and have it have power, which is why all of these trainers always want you to bring your leg back first. You have to create that space so that you can drive those knees in. So when he's creating space, he's creating it offensively, whereas when I'm creating space, oftentimes I'm creating it defensively.
Back there, we're with Langsuan, former fighter of the year. Huge Muay cow.
So this gym is up in Payao. There are very few northern Golden Age champions. He was fighter of the year in 1987, and he's kind of like one of the only people I can name from the north who was Yod Muay, which makes him very special. He was like 14 when he went down to Bangkok. So look at how he holds pads for me. Look at the patterns that he's holding for. Everything leads to a knee. And he wants me to like grab onto him and throw multiple knees at once. Because the first one is the same as throwing like more than one punch. Is that the first one stuns someone and then the second one actually does the damage. But I have this ongoing problem where I don't want to grab my trainers' heads or necks. He, very interestingly, had me grab the opposite side than what I'm used to grabbing. I usually grab across because it creates a guard at the same time, but he had me grab with the same side that I'm going to be kneeling on because he would go into clinch and out of clinch at the same time. So if you grab across, it's hard to clinch. But the way he's doing it, he's grabbing for the clinch and kneeing so that he can do all these turns. That's what made him so sticky, I think. Look at how evenly he steps back so that you can like measure those knees as you're coming forward. There are certain fighters and certain styles that you're basically just pushing someone forward and filling that space all the time. It's like you're walking and destroying at an even pace. So he's having me block his kick and then step in for that upward elbow. And then these kicks are because he's stepped into a range that's kicking range. It's basically like your opponent put themselves there, and so you're going to strike with the weapon that's appropriate for that distance, and then immediately close back into kneeing range. I have a hard time when I step forward with my left leg, stepping forward to be able to throw with my right knee immediately after. I don't have a problem on the opposite side, but for some reason walking forward with my left leg, I tend to step out instead of forward. It might be because I was orthodox for so long that I'm used to stepping out for the kick. So see how my hands are coordinated in terms of grabbing him, but there's no tension in them in order to actually control him when I'm trying to hold his neck. This is a pretty even pace of coming forward. Like, he's not rushing me. He's not making me throw like 50 things in a row, but it doesn't stop. Like, there's no slowing down. There's very little breaks except what I'm taking, which I shouldn't actually be taking. This is the relentlessness and the exhausting nature of knee fighting. So in order for Karahat and Gansak to be like Langsuan was so hard to fight because he's so exhausting, his conditioning has to be so high, which is something that Diesel Noi talks about all the time too, is about doing more than anybody else at the gym because you're a knee fighter. It's like that's how you fulfill the ethic and workload of being a knee fighter. So this is the burn at the end of the round where he's making me do doubles. And at the very, very end, he'll just have me grab a knee. So he's having me walk forward with these teeps. Look at how even he is on that. This is basically using the teep to create the distance that you want and to give yourself time to breathe. He's literally saying this to me right now. He's like, if you need to breathe, teep. A lot of people will back up. They'll back themselves up in order to breathe. That like MMA circling out thing. In Golden Age Muay Thai and in modern Muay Thai, you teep to get your opponent off of you so that you can breathe. So you actively move while trying to catch your breath. You don't stop or circle out. So I didn't follow him. Like I teeped him good, and then I didn't follow him when he went flying into the ropes. This is another thing about learning this style, and see how I'm constantly following him? He'll have me throw knees where I'm basically just marching forward, is because you're constantly covering that space as you're creating it. So you have to do that with the teep as well. Here's the very end of the round, which he's showing me how to hold. See how this is how you do it, the same as how you would do it on a bag? Saying it's exactly the same as when you're holding the bag for knees. He wants me to do this on him. A, it's hard to hold the head like this. I don't know where to put my head when I do it. And B, you would destroy somebody if you were doing bag knees on them in the ring. So that's why you train it with your trainer. It's so hard. Being a knee fighter is hard, man. This is part of why I was so excited to work with him, is that he was going to teach me the like ethic of knee fighting, the way that Diesel Noi talks about it. He's saying at the end of training, you just come on the ropes and throw those knees. The way you're doing them in shadow is the way you do them on an opponent. So he had us doing 5-minute rounds with a 2-minute break in between. I was having a hard time with this distance. There are so many trainers that I've worked with who really emphasize the importance of distance and how you keep your distance and how you close your distance. Krusan up at Sitmon Chai, who's in the library, he had this incredible pace. Like everything was the same pace, just moving forward. That's kind of what Langsuan is teaching me right here. But I'm having a hard time with it because I can keep up with the pace, but in order to do so, I'm kind of like creeping forward. Like I have no rhythm in my footwork. He's getting me to really breathe in this 2-minute break so that I can start again hard, because the 5 minutes are this like super intense, high power, high repetition, and then between rounds you want to bring your heart rate back down so you can start again. I'm creeping on him to try to keep that distance, and as a knee fighter you want to have your own pace. Even as a femur fighter you want to have your own pace, so you have to learn how to do that in pad work and in shadow. He's talking now about, again, the ethic of a knee fighter. He's like, you have to run so much to have the energy to stay on people like this. So he wants me to teep left because it's more powerful, but then you step forward and teep right on top of it. See how I just have to switch my arms the same way I switch my knees? And he's having me do it where I'm not crossing over his face, where I'm grabbing on the same side that I'm kneeing. But I pushed him off just there because I needed to breathe. And he's like, that's fine, but then you have to follow. That's the difference between backing up to breathe and teeping to breathe. It's like a mental difference. So I'm grabbing him and throwing these knees, and then I need to breathe, and so I'm shoving him off, and you have to follow with that kick, or like a kick, a teep, and then grab again. You basically are drowning your opponent. So I'm doing a little bit better of actually attaching my arms to his neck for these knees, but I'm not like holding. He would grab on, and you just could not get him off. It's like a, I don't know, alligator or something. See how there's very few steps between my strikes. Like every time I step, I'm stepping for the next strike. It's kind of this endless chain of movement. This is something I've worked with intensely with Karahat in the Sylvie study, 30 days, which was Daw. It's this continuity of just continuing your strikes and your movement so that everything is leading to the next thing, like a conversation. This is talking over somebody. This is like giving a recitation argument that you're not really giving them a chance to answer. See how he's pulling my elbows in so that I'm locking his head? That's one of my problems. That's why people can kind of escape out of my grip and I kind of get popped off, is that pinching the elbows in towards the center on the collarbone, he's actually shoving my elbow in with his hand because he can feel that I'm not locking in that way. So it's a position that you have to get used to, and one of the ways to build the strength of your forearms to be able to do that is when you hold the bag to do your knees. You have to pinch the bag with your forearms to like build the strength in your arms to be able to lock someone like that. I'm kind of doing it one-handed on each side, keeping my guard up, which is good, but he double locks all the time. And he's not a locking knee fighter, he's a moving knee fighter. So instead of like creating a lock and kind of like getting really stagnant, he's always holding, but he's not locking into a position. So he's saying teep longer. He's trying to get me to understand how I'm manipulating the distance between us using the teep.
Don't creep.
I'm teeping because he's telling me to. I'm not actually using it as the like way to see how I'm countering his punches. So I'm keeping him too far away for his strikes, and then I immediately want to come in too close for his strikes. Followed on that one. This kind of work is incredibly exhausting. Like, this will make you so strong in your stamina, but you're also learning distance. See how I had to push him off there and kick immediately, and then I stopped after the kick because I hadn't stopped after the push. I like added one thing. You have to add all the things. Like, it just keeps going. I'm still not following when I push him back so far on those teeps. Like, they're powerful, but they can't only be powerful, they have to be purposeful. I'm not pinching my heel up to my hip the way that he emphasizes so much. That's taking power out of my knees. It's also making them harder. When you pull your heel up to your hip, like up by your butt, when you're doing these kinds of knees, you create a kind of swinging momentum by pinching your leg closed like that. It's the same thing of like when you're jumping rope, how you can kind of get a relaxation in your wrists that makes it easier. That's what the heel up by your butt does for those knees. I'm having a hard time right now because Karahat and Gansak had told me that Langsuan was so hard to fight. I kind of had this personal mission to make him tired when I worked with him. And he was making me so tired. Even with this workout of like how to train knee fighting, it was so hard. And I was having a hard time breathing. My sinuses are closed up. So I'm kind of like in a bad mood because it's so exhausting, which is stupid. Because this is what I need to learn. Like, I'm trying to resurrect the ethic of the golden age knee fighter. This is the training you have to do. He's saying that when he was a kid, when he was training, they would clinch in the morning as well. Saying you would do your pad work, and about 3 rounds in the pad work would be grabbing your trainer and just holding their head and kneeing like this, and then you would go clinch. See how my head floats up when I grab him? You have to tuck your head. The way he has his head down is to give me a handle so that I can do this work, but the way his head is down is the way my head should go down when I grab. In the same way that his hip immediately goes back to cock his knee for the knee when he grabs, the head comes down immediately. See how his position? That's the position. Not only is it endless, it's power. That was good, grabbing off of that strike. That's the thing, except my head should go down too. Because I'm so tired, when he emphasized that I need to like knee and then whip him around, when you do that whip, it gives you a moment of reprieve. Even though it looks like a power swing, you're off balancing your opponent so that when your next knee comes, you're hitting them when they don't have any defense because they're trying to gain their balance. That whip, to me, is actually like when you're swimming and you like pull your face out of the water to take a breath of air. It's a hard pull, like you're using power on the whip, but you're not using strength to continue. So there I'm kind of tucking my head to the side of his head, but it needs to go down. I'm floating it up because I don't know where to put my head, because I'm uncomfortable mostly. But that turn, swinging my leg to the back, that's what every single trainer has asked me to do. Not only does that swing create distance so that your knee is really visible and really powerful, but it also creates the pivot to be able to whip your opponent around. It's functional and looks really good. There's a thing that I've started to realize about the golden age, which is that these fighters wanted their techniques and their moves to be incredibly visible. So you want the back row of gamblers to see every strike, not just the people who are sitting in the front row. So a lot of these fighters will emphasize like these big movements, like the way I'm whipping around there and bringing my legs so far back. You want people in the back row to see your points. Gum. This is the like crouching over. He's talking about how important that gum is so that when you're bringing your leg back, you're ripping your opponent's head down at the same time. Again, aesthetic and functional. It's functional because you're off balancing your opponent and pulling them down so that they don't have strength. But aesthetically, getting your opponent's head down is a huge deal in Muay Thai. So I basically punch on my way in, and then my hands just want to lock immediately onto his neck. And it's not a clinch lock, like you don't stay in one position, but it's like a clinch grip instead of a lock. Like it's like hitching a trailer, like you latch yourself onto the neck, and then you can kind of have flexibility the way a trailer has flexibility when you're turning and stuff, but you're not stuck in one position. It's actually very flexible while staying attached. So I'm starting to bring my head to the side of his more, but I need to tuck it down into his shoulder, basically the way his head is. I'm dying. This is so hard. He liked me throwing in little things of my own, so I threw an uppercut because he throws incredible uppercuts, and that elbow right there he was happy about. Like, he's happy with the improv as long as it flows with what we're doing. So because I threw that elbow, now the burn at the end of the round is elbows. But it's the same distance. Like, you have to learn the distance and how to basically walk while killing your opponent. So I'm doing these turns to catch my breath now, which is good. It's better than what I was doing before, which is shoving and not following. I'm dying. So this is the fantastic bit. My aim of making him tired, and I was all pissed off because he was making me so exhausted. And I was like, I did not fulfill my one goal of this session, is that for our last round, he gets Kun Pan to come in and hold pads for me, so that he can demo some of the stuff, but that also means I made him a little bit tired, so it was like a bittersweet. I had to take the poison in order to poison, but this was such a beautiful lesson in literally feeling what it's like to become the kind of relentless knee fighter that Golden Age legends are like he was a nightmare to fight.
Pull that hand off. Doesn't he do that? He's like.
So I'm comparing this to Yodkun Pan. Yodkun Pan, when he does his like clinch elbow, he holds the back of the opponent's head, whereas I kind of let go as I'm throwing the elbow. I do the same thing with the knees. I let go of the neck while I'm throwing the knee, and I have to learn how to like pull down on the neck while I'm throwing the knee. That's what he does. So, one of the nicknames that Langsuan got was taxi meter, like a metered taxi. So I was asking him, why were you called taxi meter? And he's explaining it to me, and it sounded like he was talking about sponsorships, that like the kadua, which is what you get paid as a fighter, went down a lot in the time that he was fighting. So he had no money after fighting, or after like taking some time off or something, and so I think taxi meter was some kind of sponsorship. He's talking about how it went from like 100 to 200,000 baht to like 30,000 baht. That's what people get paid now. Like the kids at my gym, when they're paid pretty well, is 25,000 or 30,000 baht to fight at Langsuan. But Karahat and Gansak and like Golden Age fighters, they were making like 250, 400,000 baht for some of these fights. But he's saying that even in the 90s, the kadua went way down. But that's the Golden Age. Like, that's when the peak of Golden Age Muay Thai was. But he's saying that it was already going down at that time. He was Fighter of the Year in 1987. This is beautiful. So he has Kun Pan come in to hold pads, and he's showing me how he wants this like teep to knee, and then you grab on. Look at what this looks like when he's doing it. What's incredible to me is that the way he puts his hips back when he's doing these knees, to me actually looks not right. Like, it's kind of like how Paula Radcliffe, when she runs, she has this like really weird gait, but she's one of the best runners ever. The way his hips are, to me, looks awkward, but he has incredible movement and power and flexibility in it, because it's his. Like, he did it so many times that whatever it looks like, he created that. So that's what I have to do through this like relentless, endless kneeing, is develop your own positions for what works for you. See how I'm doing exactly what he complained about at the beginning of being flat-footed? I'm not on my toes the way that he is. He's always on his toes. Look at him go. His heels are up. Oh. And then he yanks down after each one, and he yanks down on each one. That sucks for the person you're holding.
Extra. He throws extra.
Look at those kicks. See how he has that like bounce up? It's like the floor is made out of trampoline or something. So this is just burning. Like this is just, I think that Gansak said that pad work is to charge the battery. What he meant is to create power. You can see how this kind of pad work creates unbelievable power and stamina. So I'm pulling on his neck between things, but I'm not pulling on his neck when I knee. And I'm getting lazy with the heel coming up. So he's like every single knee, you're holding that leg like crazy. See how much gap I have between my heel and my butt? I don't fold my legs very much at all. I do kind of the like chin up piston knee. That's also a kind of knee. But because I'm trying to learn Langsuan, I need to be pulling my heel up. And when I pull my heel up, the entire piece comes as one piece from the hip. The way he kind of like rocks up.
Just gallop, baby. Gallop.
So the solution to my creeping is the gallop, which is, it's like a horse galloping. You just kind of like gallop forward to cover distance, and when you're already close, you keep light on your feet and moving, but you're staying stuck to somebody. Look at his energy. Look at his energy as he's directing me. Like you can feel how he wants the energy from me to be by how excited he is. He's like, go, go, go. So he's like, throw two.
Sticky, baby.
Go again. Knee, immediately. Kick, immediately. There should be no gaps between what I'm doing. Like, if there's a pause between strikes, I'm still attached to my opponent. You can feel what his training was like for years by the energy that he's requiring out of this. Like, this is kind of a light version of what he was doing. Oh, the importance of that heel is like, it's the main thing he tells me over and over. When you do it, like when you practice it, you'll feel the difference, but you have to drive with your hip. Oh, look at him go. See how his heel comes up to his butt, and then you'll see that his knee ends up coming to the center of his opponent because of the way the hip turns as you bring the hip up. You don't think about kneeing to the center. The knee will come to the center because of the way you tuck the heel up towards the butt. It's just a trajectory thing. It like creates an angle. So he's like 1-2. He wants me to go like left, right, left, right. See how he's swimming his arms? That's what my knees should be doing. And he's like, hold strong, because he can see that. Speed. Those are not strong knees, guys. Oh, so hard.
On the knees. This is what he's striking.
Okay.
I'm so upset by how hard that was.
There's Muay Cow.
Yeah.
As Muay Cow, you can never be upset by how hard the training is. The training is always incredibly hard.
Sorry.
It's like being a distance runner and you're upset by how many miles you have to run. It's like in the description of the job. He's saying that it helps to do push-ups on your knuckles to build arm strength so that when you grab your opponent, you have the arm strength to hold them. This guy who owns the gym is so sweet. So now we're coming down. He's gonna have me do the bag, but I get to rinse off first. Look at all the trophies they have over there to the right. So he's saying at the end of training, at the end of everything, you've already done pads, you've already clinched, sparred, anything. You come over and you just need a bag. Look at how beautiful his knees on the bag are. You can see the power. You can see how he whips back first. That's that looseness that I was talking about before. And the way he's moving his arms like that, he's showing how your leg kind of comes out, but lands center. This bag was hard for me to hold because there's nothing in the top. So he's like, use your forearms, like use your arm strength to hold that goddamn bag. And then I'm not bringing my heel up, but I am getting the kind of swing of kicking the leg and bringing the hip back. But look at how tight he wants it. And Kunpan, the owner of the gym behind me, you can see him smiling because he knows how important that tucked leg is.
More.
I can't imagine how many people he's trained in this gym over the years.
Way out.
Yeah, but his heel is on his butt.
So your heel will come down as you get tired and as you're like trying to do all the different things that make this motion come together, but you just keep recorrecting up. I'm saying I'm having a hard time holding the bag. His solution to that is to pull down on it. See how he's like, boom, is to like curl your body. You pull down on the upper part, and when you see him do the knees on the bag, he's got his head touched down too. He's almost like folded in half. I'm not imitating that body position, but that's how he knees on a person too. So look where you're aiming. You're like aiming into the upper part of the body. So he's like occasionally go high. So if I tucked my head and just kept my arms on that bag, I'd have the kind of lock that he has to be able to throw these without it being like an immovable lock.
500, he says.
Every day?
After everything.
500.
Tell him.
So after all your training, you come and you do 500 knees on the bag.
1,000.
And he's like, morning session and evening session. Chow yin, morning and evening. And then he's like, then tomorrow you do 600.
Start at 500.
And then the next day you do 700. He says go to 1,000. And then Panloi means like more than 1,000. Like you just keep building all the time.
2,000.
So he's like in the morning 1,000, at night 1,000. But you start at 500 and build up. But then he keeps saying 1,000, but he's like you go beyond 1,000 also. He said when he would clinch, he would be the man in the middle and have 3 opponents. So anytime someone gets thrown, the next guy comes in, so you always have a fresh opponent. It's so exhausting, but he was man in the middle with 3 other people. He's pointing to his cauliflower ear. He says his cauliflower ear is from clinching in training. He says it's not even from fighting. My trainer Kunu has cauliflower ear from clinching. His brother. He's remembering it. Look at the pain in his face when he like, thinks about it. Khao Pong was another amazing knee fighter who was one of his training partners. So in one gym, they had all of these incredible fighters training each other, and they all trained like this. 10 kilometers in the morning, 10 kilometers in the afternoon, clinching, sparring, bag work, and then 1,000 knees, morning and evening, all the time. Like this is being a knee fighter. So he's telling me just do 100 right now. For me, this is kind of hard because I do 300 knees every day, once a day, but I do sets of 50. So he's like do a set of 100, which is twice as many as I do in one single set of what I normally do. That's okay. You can like pop up a level like that. But I took it as a challenge to be like a golden age knee fighter. So if Langsuan tells you, you do 500 a day, morning and evening, and then build up to 1,000, I have to do that now. So now my sets are 100, and it's 1,000 in the morning and 1,000 in the evening, and then it's going to have to grow.
Look at his arms.
Look at his arms.
What is that? What is that?
See how it's like the knees are kind of swinging out and then angling in?
Yeah, yeah.
He fights like that. It's not just how he knees the
Maybe.
bag. Like, that's his knee. But he drills it on the bag. So I think that my heel is up by my butt now, but it's not. But I'm thinking about it, which means that eventually it will start to close. My legs will start to fold better. But the way I'm holding the upper part of that bag, because there's no stuffing in it, my head needs to tuck, which again, I wasn't doing in pad work, so you can tell it's not instinctive or in my body. So tucking my head and putting my forearms on there so that I'm kind of like hugging the bag up top is how to get into the proper upper body position for his knees.
That was 100
Yeah.
only?
เวลาถ้ามีรายการต้อง500นะอย่างต่ำต้อง300ขึ้น300 400 500ขึ้นกินได้ดื่มน้ำวิ่งก่อนก็เขาตอนเช้าต้อง
So I'm asking him about training. I'm like, in the morning you run first and then you knee.
มาปั้ม
And so he starts describing his training. AM session and PM session were identical at his gym. So you run 10 kilometers, you have to clinch, you have to do pad work, you have to do bag work, and at the end of everything, you do hundreds or thousands of knees on the bag.
Afternoon?
อยู่กรุงเทพเช้าเย็น
Chao yen, it's morning and afternoon. It's a big thing you'll hear in Thailand, Chao yen. So, as a knee fighter, having this endless endurance and doing thousands of knees on the bag makes sense. Not only do you have to do 1,000 knees on the bag, he wants 1,000 teeps. So if you start at 500 knees, you start with 500 teeps, 600 knees, 600 teeps. This is an interesting thing about being a knee fighter and learning to teep, is that the teep is the same for any style of fighting. It creates distance and it allows you to breathe. So basically you use the teep either offensively or defensively to keep your opponent at a distance that you are manipulating. So you are in control of where that distance is. His teeps tend to be offensive, so they're moving forward and he's like getting his opponent back so that he can close that distance. Whereas a fighter like Samart or like a femur fighter who doesn't like to be close, they'll use the teep while going backwards to keep their opponent off of them. But you do it both ways. You're just manipulating your opponent's distance with the teep. But it has to be powerful, for one, but more important than powerful is the timing on it. So when you're juggling a bag like this, the important thing to focus on is trying to not let it twist. See how it's twisting? Because I'm not hitting the same spot over and over again? You're learning timing and accuracy by doing hundreds and then thousands of teeps like this. It builds leg strength. He, at the beginning of this session, was talking about how one of the big differences between old school Muay Thai and modern Muay Thai is the lightness on the feet, but that this entire operation requires so much leg strength. So Thais, when they're running 10K in the morning, they're thinking leg strength. When you're doing knees and teeps on the bag, you're thinking leg strength. And you'll feel it. Like if you're used to doing 100 teeps at the end of training and you go up to 500 teeps or even just 200 teeps, you'll feel the soreness in your legs and where that is really fast. So for me, it's my hamstrings. And you can see my teep gets kind of low as I get tired. You have to keep lifting it because when you're tired in a fight, the teep saves you. That's what allows you to breathe, whether you're coming forward or backward.
Like 3, 3, 5, 5, 7, 7, 1,000.
So you match your knees and your teeps.
เด้งเขา500ใช่ไหมเราถีบซะ500เหมือนกันนั่นแหละ
So he's like, in the morning, you do 500 knees, you got to do 500 teeps. It's the same.
200บ้าง300บ้างนั่นแหละ 2 ชุด 3 ชุดก็ว่าชุดละ100บ้าง200บ้าง300เพิ่มไปเลย
So he's talking again about building up. It's like 200, 300. Diesel Noi said the same thing. Diesel Noi said after you run, keep a tree. Diesel Noi had you start at 60 and build up each day. So like 60, 70, 80, 90, like that. But it's kind of like endless. It's like a shark, depending on how big their tank is. That's how big they're gonna get. Depending on how fucking hardcore you are is depending on how many knees and teeps you're gonna end up doing each day. I asked him because he teeps with the ball of his foot in a really distinctive way. It's not distinctive among other fighters. It's when you see him hit the bag, you can see that he's hitting with the ball of his foot. There are some people who teep with their toes and some people who teep a little bit with the blade of their foot or the heel, like kind of wide foot. He does the ball of his foot, and it's very stabby, like a jab, and it punches on the bag. But he did this for so many years. He started fighting when he was 8, came to Bangkok when he was 14, and then retired in his late 20s. So he trained like this for a really long time. And now, as the trainer, him watching me, he has this like layered experience of having done it himself. And trainers love to train people the way that they grew up training. But the way he's watching me, the way that he kind of like jerks his body a little bit as he's like feeling those teeps. And he's watching me the way that older trainers in hardcore gyms watch their students. They're like, I'm going to watch you do 1,000 teeps. It's like incredible. I love the way he swims his arms like that to demonstrate how he wants the back and forth. The symmetry of the left, right to him has a fluidity. Like you can see the way he's moving his arms. It's like walking, like left foot, right foot. It's not complicated, but it's got this angle to it because it comes from the hip. Look at him move with it. He moves with each teep. He's totally feeling it. It's amazing. If Langsuan had a gym where he was teaching like young Thai boys to be the way that he was back in the golden age, it would be incredible. Oh, look at that. That's how he thinks about those knees. And he's like, you hold with your forearms. Look how he just locks on there. And look at how low his head goes. That's what I don't do. Look at his body shape. Get that body shape burned into your mind. That's the way it's supposed to look. And then you can start to feel that kind of like tucked position. So I'm saying we just watched your fight with Hapalang and you throw that knee exactly the way you throw it on the bag. So I'm asking if I can clinch with him a little bit. And he was like not excited to clinch. He started immediately talking about how old he was. He was like worried about it being exhausting, which again, Sylvie's goal of making him tired. I'm glad that he was like worried about clinching. But this is the thing about learning from these Golden Age legends, is it's not only their techniques, which is really important to document and keep, but also seeing how they trained. Like, where did that come from? Because they had a particular ethic and excitement and kind of like their personalities come through. So these guys he's talking about all being in the same gym, they didn't all fight the same. Everyone's personality comes out in the way that they use their techniques. Look at the fucking way that he rips when he turns me in the clinch. His hands are relaxed. Look at how there's not tension in his hands. But when he rips me... So he's showing me how to tuck my leg and still do practice knees, where you're like hitting with the fleshy part of your thigh. When he turns me, holy God, it's just this like rip, and he's not using strength, he's using timing, but the like swiftness of that turn, there is no way I can like catch myself on the other end of that. So he's saying as the knee comes up, that's when you rip. So he's using timing, like as my leg comes up for the knee is when he's ripping, but he does it so sharp. So he's trying to get me to time his legs, and I don't even have a grip on him, so I can't really turn him if I can't even grip his neck. But this is one of the reasons why, see how I'm locking? This is what I'm talking about when I say he doesn't lock. I'm locking there. He latches like hitching a trailer, but then he uses timing to turn all the time. So he doesn't want to be locked the way that I lock, because he uses so much timing to off balance and move the opponent. I learned very, very recently that back in the golden age you couldn't trip people in the clinch the same way you can trip them now, which is one of the reasons you see so many throws now that you didn't see in the golden age. But this ripping and off balancing was a huge point. Oh, see that little double rip back? Like how Mario double jumps? He already has his hips back and then he pushes it back a second time as he's ripping the head down. And there he's pushing me with his forearms to create the distance he wants. He can just march around the ring like that. And I'm just dead. Ugh.
You push out and pull in. Yeah.
Dieselnoy does that really well also, that push with the forearms, because he's like a condor. I have my forearms in the right spot, but I'm not pushing with my elbows. You get your elbows into the like collarbone. Oh, so pretty. I wish you guys could feel what that felt like as he was doing it. It's like 90% horrifying, and then the other 10% is like, that was so cool. Probably because it doesn't really move on me, otherwise it would be all horrifying. So you can see how the swing is like part of the movement. He's too tired to continue. I win. But I'm asking him about this thing he used to do. When people would grab him,
he doesn't use his head, he just keeps it really low.
I put my head on people, like I use my head as a third limb, and a lot of people who are really good in the clinch now do this, and he doesn't do it. He just tucks his head. He is gripping my head with his head, but he's not like pushing my head with his head. He just tucks it, but everything is his arms.
Does he go forward?
He does, he's
his
pushing.
turns are just
with
unreal.
His forearm.
He's like a tractor, he's like, pong.
So he wants a little bit of looseness. It's totally that like hitching a trailer. So I'm saying, how come nowadays fighters only lock, whereas you were always moving and pushing? He's like, if you would lock, the referee would break you. Nowadays, the referee breaks the clinch all the time, and people lock all the time. I was talking about this like clip that we saw of him versus the Hopalong fighter, and it goes forever. Like it's this endless clinch exchange because nobody's locking. They're always
how does
moving.
He do? Does he just move, turn, move?
So I'm saying back in the day, you always had to keep moving, and he's like, yeah, you want to keep moving, otherwise the referee breaks you. So I'm like, you grab, but you don't lock. Drop to like grab. But look at how he can switch his arms all the time. See? I push his arm off and he just grabs with the other one. It's a nightmare. Samagon means like the time before, like back in the day. So here's what I'm asking him. His opponent would grab him in the clinch and he would hold his right arm down by his body for uppercuts. And I'm like, how come you didn't get elbowed? And he's like, because nobody elbowed me. Like, nobody did it. Oh, look at him go. So he's like, I can uppercut an elbow.
They just never did.
Because they're grabbing him.
สมมติเราเข่ามันมีอาการใช่ไหมเนี่ยเราต่อย
It's the same thing when someone grabs you in the clinch. If you start messing with their legs, their whole consciousness is up in their arms when they're grabbing you, and vice versa. If they're trying to turn you or knee you, their consciousness goes down, and then you can like pop their arms off or whatever. So when his opponent grabbed him, they were thinking all upper body, and so when he would hold his uppercut waiting by his body,
his uppercut is
he
open.
would uppercut at the same time that they were
On
kneeing.
the opposite side?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Unreal. It's
Do you
so
feel
cool.
like you got the uppercut down?
He's like a knee and uppercut guy.
ยืนอย่างนี้ใช่ไหม
I'm asking where the power from his uppercuts came from. Look at his hips and his knees.
เอ้ยเนี่ยมันต้อง
He twists so much. Look how he like digs in there. It's like, go ahead and knee me. Uppercut's coming straight up the middle.
ใช่Langsuan uppercut ป่วย
อร่อย
I'm like, Langsuan uppercut a lot, and he's like, all the time. Makes people mouth like dizzy.
Thumbs up, hop along.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang.
I think that's good.
I like that.
You like that?
Just like wait with it.
It was so crazy to watch him just
And
like
he
hold
clinched
his
with one
arm
arm
down
all
by his
often.
body, clinching with
So
one
you
arm,
don't need both
and then
arms.
that uppercut just totally waiting.
ปั้มอะไรกันเสร็จนะวิดพื้นเวลาจะสอนให้
You should look up his videos and see him do it so that you understand what it is. And then here he's showing me how to do full
ลง
range
สุดๆขึ้นสุด
push-ups for the arm strength to be able to latch on.
ๆแขนแข็งไปกับจับคอดิ
ใช่
You don't want to do shallow little pumping ones. You like come high, you do the full range of motion on those
แล้ว
push-ups.
ก็โหนนั่นก็ได้
And then you want to do
วาง
pull-ups.
นี่ก็ได้
ค่ะ
I'm asking him which grip you use, forward
นี่
or backwards. And he's like, either
ทั้
one.
งสองอย่างนี้ก็ได้อย่างนี้ก็ได้
ค่ะ
อย่างนี้สุดอย่างนี้สุดยอดอย่างนี้สุดยอด
He's saying this is the best
ทีละ50
on your knuckles
50
for the push-ups. And he's like, do 50 of them because he thinks he's like making me be all hardcore.
ใหม่ๆจะได้หรือเปล่าสุดยอด
But
50
I've been tortured by Pinu for 4 years, so I can do 50 push-ups.
น้ำป้าขี้หัวหัว
He said that my grip is good. I hurt his ears when I was gripping him.
ที่ค่ายมวยผู้หญิงคนเดียว
เก่งจริง
ผู้ชาย
I have cauliflower ear only on my left ear from clinching.
ใช่ว่าเวลาจับต้องตก
I'm saying I understand the problem I have of not getting my elbows in, and so people can kind of wiggle out. And he's like, you have to pinch the elbows.
เนี่ยเอาศอกเน้นคอไว้นะ
ใช่
See how he like held his chest? He like pointed to his chest. He can feel the like closed in pec strength and how you want to get your elbows kind of to the center of your opponent's chest.
เก่งน้ำหนักเท่าไหร่40
47
He's asking me how much I weigh,
รุ่นเดียวกันสู้ไม่ได้
and he's like, someone your size can't fight you.
ปกติชกกับ51 52
So I'm like, yeah, I'm usually fighting 51,
แข็ง
52.
ถ้าซ้อมดีๆแข็งแน่ไม่ต้องกลัวเขาดี
He said if you train hard,
ยอด
you're
จับดี
strong.
จับแน่นดีดู
So he's basically telling me, like, what I've taught you is the golden age level of Muay Thai, and that I'm somewhere in there. Like, he can tell I'm strong. But in training with him, I could feel
นั่นน่ะ
where there is to go within
ถ้า
that
อยู่กรุงเทพ
intensity of training. It's the same thing of like, yeah, I do 300 teeps on the bag, but then you do 500 and you feel in your legs and in your hip flexors where there is to go in that.
กี่ชั่วโมงตอนเช้าตอน
โอ้
เย็น
ตั้งแต่
2 3
I asked him how many hours he was training a day because he's talking about all the things that were involved.
9 10
It was like 8 hours.
โอ้
They started running at 7
4
a.m.
ชั่วโมงอะ
ใช่
and then they would finish at 11. Then they'd
ข้าวเที่ยง
sleep
นอน
ใช่
บ่าย
all day.
ตื่นมาอีกแล้ว2
Then you
โมง
start again at 3 p.m.
พันผ้ามืออะไร
and finish at like 7:30,
น
8.
วดน้ำมันให้เทรนเนอร์นวดเสร็จเดี๋ยวออกวิ่ง
ใช่
ออกวิ่งอีกแล้วกลับมาใส่เป้า
1 ทุ่มใช่ไหม
ซ้อมเสร็จถึง2 ทุ่ม3 ทุ่ม
โอ้
You can see in his face
like
มีเวลา
remembering
พัก
how hard his training was, and it was
วิ่ง
every
บางที
day for like
5
20 years.
กรุงเทพวิ่งเช้า
ใช่
He retired in his late 20s, so he did this for a very long time.
นั่นน่ะวิ่งอย่างเงี้ยเวลาซ้อมเสร็จอะเวลาเล่นอะไรเสร็จเล่นเชิงเล่นลมเล่นปั้มเสร็จเนี่ยมาวิดพื้นอย่างเงี้ยวันละ2
And he's saying when training is done, after you've clinched, because usually people clinch last, you do these push-ups, pull-ups, and then go knee the bag. What's incredible about, he says it and Diesel Noy says it, they're like at the end of training when everything's done, you go and you do this, they see it as extra to training. Like, training is done, and then you go and you do this stuff. They're not like, it's the last thing you do in training. They're like, training is done, and then you go do this thing.
He was like 11 or 12 when he started in Payao, and then at like 14 went to Bangkok.
Muay.
So he said 11 or 12 is when he started in Payao, so older than 8. But, so he fought up in Payao a little bit, and then went down to Bangkok when he was 14, and then became Langsuan. He's awesome.